Hi, I'm Reba Hervis, Artistic Director at Overshadowed Theatrical Productions. Welcome to this week's episode from the Wings. And joining me, as always and usual, is Rebecca Leland. I just finished a book called In Such Good Company, and it is a book by Carol Burnett, who I guess has written several... Now, wait a minute. Like, you're reacting like...
Okay.
Do you really know who she is?
I do. So, her and Lucille Ball were my comedic influences.
Okay, she's written 3 or 4 books, I think, and they're all kind of telling the memoirs of how she got started and her take on comedy and different stories. And so I've actually recommended it to like a lot of people since I finished it, but it has to be people who like love Carol Burnett.
Okay,
I think it's
that's what keeps you reading it.
I didn't give it a 5 stars because I don't think that just anybody would love to pick up the book and read it. I think that people have to have some kind of interest either in theater or comedy or Carol herself or the people that were on her show for it to be interesting for them. Because one of the things that I learned about Carol is that her mom was convinced that she needed to be a writer. She said...
Her mom or grandma?
Her mom. Her mom said, you needed to be a writer. So she went to school for journalism. And she actually had to take a prerequisite course in acting. And that was when she knew that it was not a journalist that she wanted to be, but that she wanted to be an actor. And the reason her mom wanted, first of all, the reason her mom said, she goes, writing is a good career because it doesn't matter how you look. Doesn't matter what you do or, you have
a face for writing.
You have a face for writing. Wow. Exactly. But then Carol was like, no, I'm hooked. And which makes sense because she did the same thing that I did. She grew up with this imagination of creating these stories and acting them out, which I like to write, as you know, but I'd way rather direct and create everything.
And you took the speech route. She took the writing
route.
We both did it.
Yeah,
theater.
exactly.
Wow.
So then she changed and she got her big break. Her big break was in Once Upon a Mattress. Yeah. She was the lead in that. And she's also played Miss Hannigan in Annie.
Oh, of course.
she does these character roles just great. But that was never really her skill set. She was really much more of a sketch artist because she could do these things with her face.
Yeah.
Right?
No, her face is iconic.
And her comedic timing and all of that. It just was so brilliant what she could do with herself. The thing that I really found interesting about her book is just learning so much about the inside of it and in her philosophy, because I find the same thing about Lucille Ball. I think that it's really interesting to see how they rose above all the troubles that they had to face in their life and became women who were very successful. And I find the same thing about Carol Burnett. The way that Carol Burnett actually got her variety show is that something had happened with her contract where she put a clause in that if she wanted to have her own show within the first 5 years of whatever contract this was that she signed, that CBS had to give it to her. She got to the end. She didn't think she was going to take it. And she got to the very end of this 5 years. And things were not going well with what she was doing. She was getting bored. And her husband said, I guess they were out of money. I think that's what it was. They just had no money. They had moved to California. They were really struggling. And they said, well, why don't we just try to do this variety show?
Wow.
And the company, the producers and everything were like, no. You really don't. No woman can make it in a variety show. You need to just have your own sitcom. In fact, Lucille Ball offered to write her own sitcom and produce it, and Carol Burnett turned it down. Does that not remind you of Sutton Foster with what we've talked about? She turned it down and said, no, I really feel like I'm
going to take the hard path.
I have different plans for me in my life. And even though she loved acting and she loved all of that, she had this idea that she wanted her variety show to be much like its own little Broadway play every week, which is what she did. So they had Bob Mackie, who, do you know his name, is a fashion designer. He's the one that designed all the Cher's ball gowns.
Oh,
I mean, he's famous. He made what they did better.
I'm sure he was given the creative outlet.
Yes, the license to do it, so to speak. Yeah. And so I just think it's so interesting to find out how she has this vision, but then she puts these people in place that then it takes her to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So if she had not had Bob Mackie,
Mm-hmm.
then the costumes probably would not have been what they were,
Mm-hmm.
and it might have not made the show
Yeah.
as brilliant or
No.
to the level. I mean, they were building sets. They were every week. I mean, you think about how long it takes us to do things to get our costumes together, and
And they're so original, and they're
Oh,
so big.
yes, just brilliantly done. It's really sad that the show's in reruns now, obviously, but they've cut it down. The show was actually an hour long, but in reruns they've cut it down, so it's only a half an hour, which is sad because they cut all the musical numbers and all those kind of things out.
Wow. So where can you find those?
The actual hour long, you can buy a DVD set.
But that's pretty much it.
Yep, but that's pretty much it.
Wow.
So, and I think that's sad because I think there's a lot of things that are like gone and
Yeah.
missing because you don't see the big
Numbers.
musical numbers. One more story. She was with this is when she learned that she needed to be more confrontational. She was with somebody and she said both of them just kind of felt like they should they were singing a duet and they needed to go to the end of the runway and then go a few more steps closer to the audience. And they would go to the end, which is where the producer had said, you need to stop here. And they would get there and then they would go a few more steps. And so the lights would go out and everything. And they'd go, okay, we need to start over again. And we told you need to stop right there. And so they did that 2 or 3 times. And finally, the person she was with, who sadly I don't remember who it was, turned to her and said, no, you are the owner of this show. If you want to go all the way to the end, let's go to the end,
Ooh.
And she's like, okay, yeah, I need to stand up for myself, right? So they did it one more time. They go to the end, and this time they're like, no, stop. You need to stop right there. And the person that she was with said, why aren't you letting her go the rest of the way? It's her show. She should get to go there if she wants to. And they go, a light doesn't reach down there. So they was stopping her because if she went any further, she was in the dark.
It had nothing to do with her being in charge. It was they
Yes.
literally did not set it up for
Yes,
that.
right.
Oh my word.
So I thought that was a great story too, and it just shows you that Carol's willing to laugh at herself too.
Wow.
So there are a lot of really great moments. I love the story. You know, at the end of it, she always kind of came out in whatever she was dressed at the end, and would open it up and ask the audience if they had any questions, and she told me like she's talking to me. She told me.
So her book is very personal. Like, you feel
I
like
feel
she's
like
having
she's
a
talking to me,
conversation.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. So she said that she didn't really want to do it because again she's shy, right?
Oh wow.
So they say, no, we think this is really important for people to get to know you. So go out there. And so she said the first couple of weeks of shows, she's out there and nobody's got any questions. And she's feeling like really super awkward because she's like, okay, how
They're
can I
making
force
me
you
do
to
it,
make
yeah.
questions? And so they started to ask a couple and then she realized that she's really good at talking to people. And so over the history of 10 years or how many ever long that the show ran, she would do all kinds of things where people would come up, they'd kiss her on stage, they'd give her gifts, because once the audience got used to the fact that she was going to do that, then they came ready for their questions.
Wow.
She had people write her lyrics to the poem that she tells this great story about how this little boy wrote this poem for her. And so they invited him back to be in the audience again, and they had made this huge Broadway kind of number out of the poem. Yeah. I mean, she's great.
I
She's
love
just
that. I love that
great.
don't
Yeah.
stop doing something just because you're not good at it right away. Like
right.
she's like,
Yeah.
I don't really feel comfortable doing
Yeah.
this, but then as you get to doing it, people warm up, and she
Yeah.
warmed up, and it made such an impact on her show.
right.
I love that.
So read the book.
I'm reading it. I'll read it.
Read the book.
So what's it called?
It's called In Such Good Company by Carol Burnett.
I
Well,
love that.
That's it. Until next time, this is just me
And me
talking to you from the wings.